Most people want strength, but they don't want the struggle that forges it. They want peace, but they don't want to face the storm that precedes it. The truth is, an unshakable mindset isn't gifted to you. It's built piece by piece, day by day, and the building process isn't glamorous. It's lonely. It's painful. It's a war fought in silence when no one is watching. But if you can endure those 30 days, if you can stay when others quit, you'll come out different. Not harder, not colder, but unshakable. Watch this video till the end, subscribe and like, because most will quit here. But if you stay, you'll never see yourself the same. The first wall doesn't come weeks into the journey. It doesn't wait until you're prepared. It shows up almost immediately. The moment you decide to change, the moment you commit to doing something different with your life, that's when it rises. It feels like fatigue. Like your energy is drained before you've even taken the second step. It feels like doubt. A quiet voice whispering, "Are you really capable of this?" And it feels like resistance, this heavy invisible weight that makes even the smallest effort feel impossible. This is the first wall, and it's not built by the world outside you. It's built by the part of you that clings to the familiar, because the moment you step outside your comfort, your old identity panics. It wants you back where it feels safe. Safe in patterns, safe in excuses, safe in the life that kept you small. Most people collapse here. They mistake this wall for a sign that they're not ready. They think resistance means weakness. They assume fatigue means they don't have what it takes, and so they retreat. They tell themselves it wasn't the right time, or they'll try again later, but later never comes. What they never realize is that the wall was never the end, it was the beginning. That pushback wasn't proof of failure, it was proof of growth. Resistance always rises when you're on the edge of becoming someone new. Think about it. When you've lived in the same patterns for years, your body and mind have memorized them. They've built their comfort around them. And when you try to rewrite those patterns, the system fights back. Not because you're incapable, but because you're disrupting what's familiar. That's why the first wall feels so overwhelming. It's not just physical tiredness, it's every doubt, every insecurity, every fear you've ever carried, showing up at the same time. It's the part of you that's terrified of change, begging you to stop before you begin. But here's the truth, you don't need to demolish the wall in one strike. You just need to push long enough to see that it doesn't stretch on forever. The wall is thick, but it's not endless, and every step you take against it weakens it. Every time you refuse to quit, you prove to yourself that the voice of resistance doesn't get the final say. The breakthrough doesn't come when the wall disappears. It comes when you realize you can keep moving even while it's still in front of you. You don't need perfect energy. You don't need perfect confidence. You need the courage to take one more step, especially when everything inside you wants to stop. And when you do, something shifts. The wall doesn't crumble all at once, but cracks appear. You see glimpses of what's on the other side. You taste the proof that this isn't the end, but the threshold. This is why most people fail. They never give themselves long enough to see the cracks. They retreat before the wall begins to weaken. They never learn that the resistance was temporary, that the fatigue was an illusion, that the doubt was nothing more than fear disguised as logic. So when you face your first wall, and you will, remember this, it isn't there to block you, it's there to test you, to see if you're serious, to see if you're willing to keep moving when it's hard, when it's ugly, when it feels pointless. And if you can push through when everything screams to quit, you won't just break the wall, you'll break the part of you that thought you couldn't. That's the real beginning. That's where transformation starts. There are mornings when you wake up and feel unstoppable. Energy flows easily, your purpose feels clear, and action comes without effort. On those days, everything feels possible. But then there are mornings when you wake up heavy, the alarm rings, but you don't move. The thought of trying feels unbearable, doubt creeps in, and suddenly the fire that once felt endless is nowhere to be found. This is where most people live, in the tug-of-war between fleeting feelings and their deeper intentions. They rise when it feels good, they quit when it feels hard, and without even realizing it, their entire life becomes controlled by emotion, by moods that shift with the weather, by energy that fades without warning. But if you want to build an unshakable mind, you cannot afford to live like that. Your feelings will betray you. They are unreliable, unpredictable, and unstable. One moment they push you forward, and the next they drag you down. If you rely on them to carry you, you'll never reach where you're meant to go. That's where discipline steps in. Discipline doesn't ask you how you feel. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't wait for the perfect wave of motivation. Discipline is the decision to act, no matter the storm inside you. Think about it. Every breakthrough you've ever had came in a moment where you acted despite not wanting to, where you showed up when it was easier to hide, where you chose progress over comfort. That's not motivation, that's discipline. And it's the difference between those who rise once and those who keep rising for a lifetime. But here's the hard truth. Discipline is built, not given. You don't wake up one day with it. You carve it out in the daily grind, in the unglamorous choices no one sees. You build it every time you silence the negotiation in your head and simply move. It starts small. One task you complete even when you don't want to. One workout you finish even when you feel drained. One hard conversation you choose to have instead of avoiding. These moments may look ordinary, but each one is a brick laid in the foundation of a stronger you. And as the foundation grows, something powerful happens. Your emotions stop running your life. You still feel tired, but you move anyway. You still feel doubt, but you act anyway. You still feel fear, but you step forward anyway. Because discipline has taught you this truth. Your feelings can scream all they want, but they don't decide your future. The freedom you're searching for doesn't come from waiting until you feel good. It comes from knowing you can move even when you don't. That's the real strength, being in control when everything inside you says stop. Imagine the life you could build if your actions were no longer dictated by emotion. If you stopped waiting for motivation and started living from principle. If every day, no matter what you felt, you honored your commitments to yourself. That is what discipline creates. A life not built on moods but on mastery. A mind that doesn't collapse every time the weight of fatigue or doubt shows up. A self that you can trust, because you know no matter what, you will follow through. And when you live like that, you become untouchable. Not because life gets easier, but because your response never wavers. So remember this, your emotions may rise and fall, but discipline is the anchor that keeps you steady. And the moment you choose discipline over feeling, you stop being controlled by your moods, and you start being defined by your strength. You've been taught to look for the big breakthrough, the dramatic moment, the life-changing decision that instantly rewrites your story. But that's not how real transformation works. The truth is, the big victories you dream about are built on hundreds of smaller ones you rarely notice. It's the little promises you keep to yourself when no one's watching, the extra 5 minutes you stay when your body says stop, the single task you finish instead of pushing it off again. Alone they feel small, insignificant, easy to dismiss. But when you stack them, day after day, something shifts. Your brain begins to rewire itself. It stops expecting failure and starts anticipating progress. It learns that when you set a goal, you follow through, that when resistance shows up, you move anyway. And soon, the person who once doubted everything begins to trust themselves again, not because of one big leap, but because of countless small steps. The danger is that most people overlook these moments. They wait for the perfect day to change everything. They chase the big gesture, the crash diet, the 30-day sprint, the dramatic transformation they can post for the world. But grand gestures without foundation collapse under their own weight. You don't need fireworks, you need consistency. Because consistency compounds, one small win fuels the next. And when you string them together, they create momentum, momentum that becomes unstoppable. Think about the difference between quitting after one step and choosing to take another. The gap looks tiny in the moment, but magnify it across weeks, months, years, and that tiny choice creates an entirely different life. That's the power of small wins. The shift begins when you stop underestimating them. When you realize brushing off one simple task is not harmless, it's training your brain to expect failure. But completing it, even when it feels unimportant, is training your brain to believe in progress. Every win, no matter how small, is a vote for the future you, a piece of evidence that you are capable, that you are consistent, that you are building someone stronger than the person you used to be. So when you feel like the mountain ahead is too big, stop staring at the peak. Look at the step in front of you. Take it. Then take another. Each one is a win. Each one matters. And over time they stack into the foundation of the transformation you've been waiting for. This is the truth no one tells you. The life you dream about isn't built in one moment of brilliance. It's built in the quiet repetition of small victories that no one sees. And the more you stack, the more unstoppable you become. Because when your brain learns to expect growth instead of failure, you stop needing motivation. You stop doubting if you can. You start living as if progress is inevitable, because by then it is. That's the power of small wins. They don't just change your habits, they change who you believe you are. And once that changes, everything else follows. There's a voice that follows you everywhere. You don't invite it, yet it's always there. When you look in the mirror, when you try something new, when you stumble, it speaks first. And most of the time, it doesn't speak with kindness. It speaks with doubt, with criticism, with limitation. You're not good enough. You always fail. Why even try? You've lived with this voice for so long that it feels like truth. You don't even question it anymore. You accept its judgment as reality, even though it's nothing more than a broken record of past experiences, old conditioning and fear. But here's what you need to understand. Your life bends in the direction of your inner dialogue. Every time you allow that voice of limitation to go unchecked, it becomes stronger. It shapes the way you act, the way you carry yourself, the way you see your own potential. You don't fail because you're incapable. You fail because you believe the lie long enough to stop trying. This is why rewiring your inner dialogue matters. It's not about becoming blindly positive or pretending challenges don't exist. It's about refusing to let destructive thoughts dictate who you are and what you can do. The first step is awareness. Most people never stop to listen. They just obey. But when you pause and hear the words you've been feeding yourself, you begin to see how toxic they've become. You notice how quickly you insult yourself when you fall short, how harshly you judge yourself for being human. Once you catch it, the next step is interruption. When the thought comes, I can't do this, you don't argue with it, you replace it, you don't let it play on repeat, you cut it off and redirect it towards strength. You tell yourself, I've done hard things before, I can do them again, not as empty encouragement, but as a reminder of reality, because you have survived, you have endured, you have proven yourself many times. Every time you choose a stronger dialogue, you rewire the pathways in your brain. At first it feels forced. It feels fake. But repetition is how the mind learns, and with enough repetition, the old destructive voice weakens, the new one grows louder. And here's the breakthrough. When your inner dialogue shifts, your entire world shifts with it. You carry yourself differently. You approach challenges with more grit. You take risks you would have once avoided, not because the challenges disappeared, but because the story you tell yourself about them changed. Think of it this way. If you spend your life telling yourself you're weak, you'll find proof of weakness everywhere. But if you teach your mind to say, I'm capable, I'm resilient, I'm learning, you'll start noticing evidence of growth instead. What you focus on expands, and your inner dialogue controls that focus. This isn't easy. The destructive voice won't vanish overnight. It will fight for space in your head, clinging to every mistake, every flaw, every insecurity. But you don't need to silence it completely. You just need to stop giving it the final word. So the next time it rises, don't collapse. Don't bow to it. Step back and remind yourself, this voice is not truth. This voice is not me. I decide what I believe. And the more you practice that, the more powerful you become. Because when your inner dialogue shifts from destruction to strength, you stop living as a prisoner of your past. You start living as the author of your future. That is the power of rewiring your inner dialogue. It's not just about thinking differently. It's about becoming someone different. Someone who no longer erodes themselves from the inside, but builds themselves up one thought at a time. Discomfort. It's the thing you've been running from your whole life. The moment it shows up, you shrink back. The ache in your body, the unease in your chest, the heaviness in your mind, you take it as a sign to stop. You've been conditioned to believe pain is punishment, that it means you're breaking down, that it's proof you're not strong enough. But that belief is the very thing that has kept you weak. Pain isn't punishment, it's practice. Every time you step into discomfort, you're not being broken, you're being sharpened. You're training yourself to hold the weight of life without collapsing under it. You're teaching your mind and body to endure, to adapt, to grow stronger than they were yesterday. Look back on your life. The times you grew weren't the times when everything was easy. They were the times when you were stretched, when you were uncomfortable, when you were forced to carry more than you thought possible. That pressure wasn't there to destroy you, it was there to reveal you. But here's the problem, most people never let discomfort do its work. They feel the burn and run from it. They face the challenge and retreat. And because of that, they stay exactly the same. They never learn that discomfort is not the enemy. It's the forge. It's the fire that molds raw steel into unbreakable strength. The moment you start reframing discomfort as training, everything changes. Suddenly the pain you feel in the gym isn't suffering. It's strength being carved into your muscles. The unease you feel having that difficult conversation isn't humiliation. It's courage being etched into your character. The uncertainty you face when you take risks isn't failure. It's resilience being built into your mind. Discomfort is life's classroom. And every time you endure it, you walk out with a lesson no book could ever teach. So instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Start asking, what is this training me for? Because it is training you for the harder battles ahead, for the weight of the dreams you're carrying, for the life you keep saying you want, but don't yet realize will demand more from you than comfort ever could. The truth is, strength cannot be built in safety. You can't stay wrapped in what's easy and expect to become resilient. Growth has a price, and that price is discomfort. Not once, not sometimes, but daily. And when you embrace that truth, something shifts inside you. You stop seeing discomfort as a threat. You start seeing it as a signal that you're exactly where you're supposed to be, on the edge of growth. That's the moment you become dangerous. Because now the very thing that used to make you quit becomes the very thing that makes you stronger. Pain stops being your excuse and starts being your weapon. So the next time discomfort rises, and it will, don't run. Don't retreat. Recognize it for what it is, training, a chance to sharpen your endurance, to stretch your resilience, to become someone who cannot be broken. And when you live like that, discomfort loses its power to scare you. Instead, it becomes the fuel that forges you, the fire that prepares you, the practice that shapes you into who you were always meant to be. Everywhere you look, there's noise. The endless scroll, the constant chatter, the demands of the world pulling you in 100 different directions. It feels like you can't escape it. And in that storm of distraction, your mind becomes restless, anxious, scattered. You try to think clearly, but your thoughts keep colliding. You try to breathe, but the weight of chaos presses harder. This is why stillness feels foreign to you, because you've been conditioned to believe motion equals progress, that doing more, chasing harder, moving faster is the only way to get ahead. But the truth is, movement without clarity is nothing but wasted energy, and clarity is born in stillness. Stillness is not laziness. It's not giving up. Stillness is power. It's the pause that sharpens the blade before the next strike. It's the breath that steadies you before the leap. It's the silence where you can finally hear your own voice above the noise of the world. When you choose stillness, something shifts. The racing thoughts begin to slow. The fog that's clouded your judgment begins to lift. You start to see things as they are, not as fear paints them, not as distraction distorts them. And in that moment of calm, you find direction. Most people never find this edge. They spend their lives reacting to chaos, pulled like puppets by every sound, every demand, every urgency around them. They don't realize that by never stopping, they're never really in control. They're exhausted, drained, chasing, but never centered. But when you practice stillness, just a few minutes, just a few breaths, you reclaim your power. You remind your mind who's in charge. You stop reacting and start responding. You realize that the world can be loud, but you don't have to let it live inside you. Stillness doesn't erase chaos, it prepares you for it. When storms come, and they always will, stillness keeps you grounded while others are swept away. It gives you the clarity to act with precision instead of panic. It makes you untouchable, not because the storm disappears, but because it can no longer move you. And that's the art. Not running away from the noise, but learning to hold your center in the middle of it. To breathe when the world is rushing. To pause when your emotions want to explode. To stay rooted when everything around you is pulling you apart. That's how you become unshakable. Not by silencing the world, but by mastering the silence within yourself. So don't underestimate stillness. It's not weakness. It's not wasted time. It's your edge. The discipline that separates those who burn out from those who rise. The practice that transforms chaos into clarity and restlessness into strength. Because in the end, it's not the loudest person in the room who holds the power. It's the one who can sit in silence, breathe deeply, and still see clearly when no one else can. That's the art of stillness, and once you master it, nothing outside of you can ever shake what's within you. How many times have you found yourself back in the same place you swore you'd never return to, the same habit, the same decision, the same disappointment? It feels like déjà vu, but heavier, because this time you know better, and yet here you are again. That's the trap of old patterns. They don't just haunt you, they repeat themselves. Not because you're weak, not because you're broken, but because your mind clings to what's familiar even when it hurts. Comfort isn't always safety, it's just repetition. And when you live in repetition, your past keeps writing your future. But there comes a moment, a quiet, ordinary moment, where everything can change. The thought rises, the impulse returns, the old pattern tries to pull you under, but instead of obeying, you pause, you breathe, and in that pause, you realize, I don't have to choose this again. That single pause is where freedom begins. Most people never find it. They move on autopilot, reacting the way they always have, following the script they never agreed to but never rewrote. They think change requires massive effort, but it doesn't. It requires one different choice, one interruption to the cycle, one moment of awareness that says, this stops here. And when you make that choice, even once, something powerful happens. You prove to yourself that the cycle isn't unbreakable. You prove that you are not a prisoner of your past. You are the author of your next step, and that proof is the spark that begins rewriting everything. But here's the truth you need to understand. Breaking patterns isn't about perfection. It's not about never slipping again. It's about refusing to surrender to the old story. Every time you choose differently, even if it's messy, even if it's small, you weaken the grip of the cycle. The old pattern loses its authority, and a new one begins to take root. This is where your life starts to shift, not in grand declarations, but in those unseen, everyday decisions. The late-night moment when you turn away from the thing that numbed you yesterday, the heated argument where you respond with calm instead of rage, the morning you rise instead of rolling over, proving to yourself that discipline is possible. These are the cracks in the cycle, and through those cracks, light begins to pour in. And over time you realize something you are not doomed to repeat. You are not chained to who you were. You are capable of building a future that doesn't look like your past. All it takes is the courage to stand in that crucial moment, the moment the old voice returns and say, not this time. That's the breakthrough. That's the transformation. Not a perfect life, but a chosen one. Not a flawless path, but a conscious one. And once you taste that power, the power of choosing differently, you'll never look at your patterns the same way again. Because now you know your future doesn't have to echo your past. It can be rewritten one choice at a time. And the moment you decide to break the cycle, even just once, is the moment your entire trajectory shifts forever. Life doesn't usually strike you in the body first. It doesn't begin by breaking your bones or tearing your flesh. It starts here, inside. It attacks your emotions, anger, fear, doubt. They arrive like thieves in the night, stripping away your balance, leaving you restless, unstable, reactive. Before you even realize it, the battle isn't outside, it's within. Think about how many times you've crumbled, not because the situation was impossible, but because your emotions drowned you before you could even fight. You lashed out when you should have paused. You froze when you should have stepped forward. You gave up, not because you weren't capable, but because you believed the storm inside you was bigger than your strength. This is why emotional fortitude matters. It's the ability to stand steady when everything inside you wants to collapse. It's learning to breathe when your chest tightens, to wait when your anger screams for reaction, to remember who you are when fear tries to erase you. Most people live as slaves to their emotions. They let them dictate their choices, their relationships, their destiny. But fortitude means flipping that script. It means acknowledging the emotion without becoming its prisoner. Anger can rise, but you don't have to throw it like fire. Fear can whisper, but you don't have to bow to it. Doubt can echo, but you don't have to believe it. This strength doesn't come by accident. It's trained. Just like the body grows stronger under weight, the mind grows stronger under pressure. Every time you choose calm over chaos, Every time you ground yourself instead of reacting, you're building emotional muscle. At first it shakes. At first it feels impossible. But with repetition it becomes natural. And then something powerful happens. You stop being so easily moved. The same insults that once broke you now roll off your back. The same fear that used to paralyze you becomes fuel for action. The same doubt that used to silence you becomes a challenge you're ready to face. Emotional fortitude doesn't mean you never feel, it means you feel deeply, but you don't lose yourself in the feeling. You experience the storm, but you remember you are not the storm, you are the ground. It passes over. This is the key to resilience, because life will never stop testing you. People will betray you, plans will fail, fear will rise again and again. But if your emotions no longer control you, then nothing outside of you can either. So the next time your anger flares, your fear grows, your doubt takes hold, pause, breathe. Remind yourself that these are not commands, they are signals. And you are the one who decides how to respond. That's what emotional fortitude gives you, the power to stay standing when everything else is falling apart. The strength to carry your calm into the chaos. The ability to respond with clarity when the world expects you to collapse. And when you live with that kind of strength, you stop being a victim of life's storms. You become the anchor, unshaken, grounded, untouchable. There's a version of you waiting on the other side of this struggle, stronger, wiser, clearer, a version who doesn't stumble the same way, who doesn't bend the same way, who carries a weight you're not yet strong enough to hold, but one day will. The problem is, most people never meet that version of themselves, not because it doesn't exist, but because they keep living like the person they've already outgrown. You've been holding on to the old identity, the one that doubts, the one that hesitates, the one that repeats yesterday's mistakes, because it's easier than stepping into tomorrow's power. And as long as you live as that self, you will keep creating the same results, over and over. But here's the truth, your future self isn't built later, it's built now. With every choice you make, you are either feeding the old version of you, or you are breathing life into the person you're meant to become. Ask yourself, how would your future self think in this moment? How would they act? How would they carry themselves in the face of fear, rejection, or resistance? That's who you must begin to embody, not tomorrow, not when things get easier, now. At first, it feels like pretending, like you're stepping into shoes that don't quite fit. But every day you live as that future self, the fit becomes more natural. Your body learns it, your mind adapts to it, your spirit grows into it, until one day, it's no longer something you're reaching for, it's who you are. The danger is in waiting until you feel ready, waiting until you have proof, waiting until the circumstances line up. But waiting is how people die with their potential still locked inside them. The unshakable mindset doesn't wait for evidence, it creates it. Living as your future self is not about fantasy, it's not about pretending to be perfect or untouchable. It's about aligning with the identity that pulls you forward instead of the one that drags you back. It's about asking, what would the stronger version of me choose right now, and then choosing it. When you begin to do this, you realize something powerful. The gap between who you are and who you want to be isn't as wide as you thought. It's not built on years, it's built on decisions. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, courage over comfort, growth over stagnation, you collapse that gap. This is how transformation happens, not in some distant future, but in the quiet daily decision to act as the person you are becoming. So stop waiting for that version of yourself to appear one day as if by miracle. You build them with your choices, you embody them with your actions, you live them into reality. And the moment you stop living as who you've been and start living as who you are becoming, that's the moment your unshakable mindset is no longer a goal, it's your life. There will be days when you fall, days when all your progress feels like it's been erased in a single moment, days when you question whether the fight has been worth it at all. That's the truth. No one wants to admit. Strength doesn't mean you never stumble. It doesn't mean you never break. Strength means you refuse to stay down when life tries to bury you. Think back to every moment you thought was the end. The nights you lay awake, convinced you couldn't carry on. The mornings you dragged yourself out of bed with nothing left but emptiness. And yet, here you are, still breathing, still standing, still searching for a way forward. That alone proves you are stronger than you realize. But if you want to build an unshakable core, you need more than survival. You need a mindset that cannot be broken. No matter how hard life pushes, that core is not built in the good times. It's forged in the collapse, in the losses, in the setbacks that try to convince you to quit. Your core becomes unshakable the moment you decide that falling is never final. You may bend, but you will not break. You may stumble, but you will rise again. You may lose battles, but you will not surrender the war. Because inside you is something deeper than fear, deeper than doubt, a root that cannot be pulled, no matter how violent the storm. Most people collapse because they mistake failure for identity. They fall once and believe they are failures. But you must learn to separate the event from who you are. Falling is an event, staying down is a choice. And when you understand that, life loses its grip on you. The unshakable core is built on one simple truth. You cannot control the storm, but you can control the ground you stand on. And when you've done the work, when you've trained your discipline, sharpened your mind, embraced your struggle, and chosen your future self, your ground becomes solid. No matter what crashes against it, it holds. This is the point where life changes. Not because you stop falling, but because you stop fearing the fall. You no longer waste energy pretending to be unbreakable. You realize that true strength is not in the illusion of perfection, but in the reality of resilience. So when the next storm comes, and it will, don't fear it. Stand in it. Let it test you. Let it push. Because every time you rise after the fall, your core grows stronger. And with each rise, the unshakable mindset becomes less of a practice and more of your nature. That's the power of the unshakable core. It doesn't promise you an easy life. It promises you this: no matter what life throws at you, you will not stay down. You will rise again and again until nothing can move you from the ground you've built within yourself.